My name is Daphne Cote. Welcome to my studio and thanks for joining me this morning. We're going to be doing a drawing demo or a drawing tutorial, and we're going to be drawing Marilyn Monroe. So we are going to switch the camera over and get started. So we've got Marilyn Monroe is what we're going to be drawing. And thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for the few of you sticking around as I went through some technical difficulties like I do every morning. Jeepers. Okay, so let's get started on drawing Marilyn. So I like to start off by creating a container for Marilyn's head. So I just want to fiddle with that. Okay, so we're gonna start with the top of the head, and I look at the hair and I use it as a container, and I can always go in and make it smaller, but I can't make it bigger. So for instance, if I just start drawing the eyes, it's kind of like throwing my pencil down and hoping I hit the right mark, which isn't a very accurate way of drawing. So if I start with a container, then I know relatively how big to make everything. And then I can work my way in, and it kind of acts, it's kind of like how you would put together a puzzle, really. So starting from the outside edges and putting all the pieces together and then working your way in. So we're going to start with the top of the hair, and then we're going to use our eraser. Do you see how I cut my eraser? It's been rolling around in my pencil case, so it's quite dark and black because there's charcoal and other graphite things in there. But basically what I do is I take a regular eraser and I cut with a utility knife. I cut a wedge off of there so that when I'm using the eraser, the way that I have to hold it and the way that it winds up using is that it pushes against the edge, and so it always keeps a point no matter what. Whereas if you're just using your white eraser like a big block, then what happens is the corners wear away really quickly. So I like to cut a wedge off the eraser, and then it's really easy and nice to use, and I always have a pointed edge. So a little tip for this morning. Okay, so we start off with some light lines that show the edge of our drawing, and then, or like the edge of the hairline. And you'll see that in the drawing here, the edges of the hairline are white, like she's got really white hair, so we want to leave it that way. And then we're going to start drawing the inside of the hair a little bit. And then what I do is I draw a line that goes right across the face that marks how far the forehead comes down and hits the top of the eyebrows. And then even in between the eyes, there's a little bit of shading, so it all kind of works out to have that there. And then I think about how much space is in between the eyes, like the amount of space for the bridge of the nose, like above the bridge of the nose. And usually you can tell that and put marks in because there's shadow that goes into the eye sockets right in here. If you're really interested in this, I have posted a demo drawing video on how to draw eyes. So you can check that out later too if you like today. So eyebrows are the most important parts of the face and help us to really distinguish a person's characteristics or personality, like the way that they actually look, is determined by the eyebrows, the shape of the eyebrows. And that's because it's the top of our eye sockets which create this cast shadow down over top of our face. And that has to do with the lighting, the way that lighting always comes from above us and hits our face. And so that's why when somebody is standing across the room from you, you can still recognize who they are, even though you can't see the color of their eyes. If you want to look up something fun today, there has been studies where and there's really cool articles and websites that are interactive, where you can, what should you look up? Look up eyebrow recognition, eyebrow and face recognition. So if they post a bunch of photos of celebrities where they take their eyebrows off of their faces but leave just their eyes, and you can't recognize who they are. And then there's usually like a little slide ruler or something that you can drag across the screen and puts back on their eyebrows, and then all of a sudden you can see who they are. So it's kind of a cool and fun thing to look up on, because science and people are really interesting. So I'm starting to draw the eyes, and I'm drawing them from the top down. And I'm thinking about the shape of the eye sockets first and foremost. And I am drawing really light, so it's not just that you can't see very well, that the camera's not working. The camera's working, it's just that my drawing is really light, and we're going to get darker as we go along. So besides the eye sockets, these shapes here, the next most major point to put in is the shadow underneath the nose. You need to measure to find out where to put the shadow underneath the nose by the distance of the space on the cheeks. So if you look at how much space do the cheeks take up, the space in between the eyes, that's a good way to determine where to put the nose. And the shadow of the nose starts at the very tip of the nose. So when you're looking at shadows for the nose, you want to look, so the shadow starts at the tip of the nose and then goes down, and then usually casts along the lip somewhere here. So you can see that on the Marilyn image and then on my face as well. And then when we're measuring where the shadow for the nose goes, we want to measure the space along here on our cheek. What kind of angle does that go at? How much distance that is, and then the other distance is the light portion that goes in between our eyes. That's the bridge of the nose, to figure out the width. And those things help to contribute to, let's see here, flipped around, back down to our drawing. So that helps to figure out where exactly to put this shadow that happens underneath the nose. And instead of trying to see it as a nose, we kind of have to turn off all the language in our brain and just see it as a shape of tonal value. Just where does that dark space go? And you can use your eraser as a drawing tool to reshape things, areas. This dirty eraser is leaving marks. All right. So there's some interesting things happening along the edge of the nose here. There's the light shape there. And then this shadow actually has a bit of a dark edge to it right along here, almost like a line where that forms. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect right from the start. You always have a chance to change it. So it doesn't have to be perfect right from the start. And then I'm going to look at all of the spaces in between things. So how we started off with the length of the forehead, that's really important to figure that out. So we look for the spaces in between things, in between the facial features, in order to get the right spacing and characteristics of the person. So then I'm going to look at the cheeks, and I'm just putting in a little bit of shading to get the right size of the face and the cheeks. And then that's going to help to determine where the top lip is. Also, figuring out this space here, looking at the negative, positive space type of thing back and forth to figure out where does the top lip go and what kind of shape is it. It's determined by how much space is between this subtle shadow line here and the top of the lip. So looking at this shape of light that's on her upper lip right here helps me to find where the lip goes. And I like to fill in tonal value because then I can see if the shape is too big or too small. And then instead of drawing the bottom lip, I like to draw the shadow underneath the bottom lip. And then that helps to define the right spacing for that bottom lip. Now I'm looking at the space between the lip and the bottom of the cheek, or the bottom of the jaw, sorry, not the cheek, to get the right spacing there, and then the right spacing for the chin. And I'm also looking at angles, and it's easier to create angles and then curve them than to get the correct curve at the right angle, if that makes sense. So I know that I draw quite quickly. So I'll try to slow down here a little bit. It's hard though, I just love drawing. And I love looking at all of these different tonal values. And that's why looking up images of old black and white movies or black and white photos of movie stars, they used really direct lighting, really dramatic lighting. Whereas nowadays, most people are using this bright lighting where you barely even see any shadows around the nose. It's quite interesting. And it's so that we look younger, because it also blurs out and gets rid of all of our wrinkles. So let's change back to here. Oh, sorry. There we go. I'm just making that a bit bigger so that you can really look at the areas and shapes in her face. I'm gonna see if I can make it even a little bit bigger for you. Really zoom in on her face. There we go. So that you can see those shadows underneath her nose, the shadow that goes on her cheek, and how it kind of forms like steps. So there's a little bit of an angle that comes right across from the top of her upper lip and then goes down around her mouth so that it kind of interjects with the bottom lip if you drew a line, and then down to the chin. All right, and then we've got this shirt here, which almost hits the chin at the bottom. This line that comes across here, up and around. And so that line that goes down and around there. And then we're going to get into a few more details here. If I am going too fast at all, please let me know. So let's start working at the eyes. I like to start with the eyelid and eyelashes. So I look at the curve of the top of the upper eyelid, and why this image is so great for that is that there's a real definition of her upper lid and of her eyelashes. And just in general, artists tend to make eyes a little bit bigger than they are. We're all kind of fascinated by eyes. And then I don't put too much detail into it yet because I want to draw the other eye as well in case I put one in the wrong spot. Then it's easy to move if I don't have too much time put into the drawing of the eyes. Then I'm more willing to move them if they're incorrect. So I think about how much of this space do I see above the eyelid to the eyebrow. And you know what? I think this one is off. And let's see here. How's this one? I think so. And then there's just some more shading that I notice over here. And she's got some droopy eyes. And then you kind of work on making them look at you, right? So sometimes you need to reposition them a little bit. And then let's work on this shape here. You know what I think? I've got to add some shadow in here so that I can see things a little bit better. Get some tonal value shapes put in there. Because I feel like her face is a little bit wide here. That maybe her hair comes in a little bit more. And let's take out this eye. all together. And so I like to practice trying to get things right instead of trying to practice mistakes. So even if I'm wrong, that's okay. That means that I'm learning something. So that shifts the eye over to about there, which is a little bit more accurate. And then I'm going to shift this over as well. Yeah, because there's a little too much space on the cheek there. And then that brings this line over a bit. And that makes me feel a little happier. And then just to look at where the bottom of the ear goes, I just measure it. So I have my images here that I've been working on, and then I just look and put my pencil down. Where is the bottom of the ear and what does it line up with? And it lines up with the top of the mouth. So then I can just do the same, line up the top of the mouth, and so the bottom of the ear is going to be right here. And I can look and measure to see where on the face is the hairline. I'm gonna do this little curve. Oops, there we go. And up. Where does that little curl come out? Where all the dark stuff starts. And her hair is the funnest part of the entire drawing, I think. And it's just large areas of tonal value, really. And then to capture the edge of the hair, you just fill in the background with some tonal value. Oops. See, when you hold your pencil off to the side like this, you can really shade quite quickly. Right, I didn't even get back to finishing the eyes. I just jump all over the place because I'm kind of like that. I like to keep engaged in what I'm drawing, so sometimes I jump all over. So anyways, I'm gonna go back to the eyes. Stay focused, Daphne. So I take an eraser to
get the tops of the eyelids, the little highlight on the tops of the eyelids. I'm gonna reinforce these eyebrows. And then there's a little bit of shading down the nose that I'm going to carry out there. And the whites of the eyes are shaded in a little bit. They're darker than like the highlight on the nose. The highlight on the nose is going to be the biggest thing. And really, we should just shade the entire face just a little bit. If you shade the entire face just a little bit, then when you go into areas, I don't know if you can see that I shaded in the entire face a little bit, and I'm going to get darker as I go along. Then you can take an eraser. This is my fancy dancy electric eraser. And I can pull out the highlights, like the one on the eyelids that we were just talking about. Like that. And it really starts to make it pop. Okay, so back to these eyes and making them feel a little bit more detailed. Start to make the eyelashes a little bit darker because I'm committed to these eyes now. I feel that they're in the right spot. So I'm going to put the pupil in, shading on the top of the iris because the eyelid and the eyelashes create a shadow. Then there's some shading, some dark parts that go along the bottom of the eyelid, along the bottom eyelid there. And I really want this to feel round. Capturing a few more dimensions and areas along the eyebrow, and then I want to pull up this shaded area next to the eye. And then I notice that there's like a highlight happening in the corner right there. And then that leads out from there to the side of the hair, which gets quite dark along there and creates this like curled shape. So everything is relative to everything else, so that makes it feel like there's some sort of curve and flow there. So there's another plane to the side of the face. There's a dark shape here next to the ear where the hair goes. So now you can see I'm starting to get a lot darker in my drawing, because now I know everything is placed in the right spot. Or I think it is. So I have the luxury of going a bit darker. Doing the other pupil and iris, and because I'm getting into details, then I hold my pencil a little bit differently, like the way that you would if you're writing. A little shadow from her eyelashes happening on the top of her cheek there. And this shadow is a bit darker. And then that brings me to the shadow going down the nose. And we can find the nostrils, and I tend to not draw the nostrils as dark as they really are because people don't really like to have people paying too much attention to noses. I don't know. People are a little bit weird about noses and feet. We don't like to draw too much attention to them. And she's got a cute little nose. And sometimes there's not a lot of differentiation or like a difference between the nostril and some parts of the shadows, so you just let it go. Here we go, another part of the shadow happening underneath there. And then we get to the upper lip. And drawing around the lip and the shadows and the shading around the lip is just as important as drawing the lip itself. And it's always easier to draw people with their mouths closed because then you don't have to deal with teeth. So if you're looking for images to draw later today and you want to keep exploring portraits, if you want it a bit easier on yourself, try to find ones where they don't have big smiles that show their teeth. Unless that's something that you want to tackle, which is totally fine. So for her, I just put a little line in the mouth. I just put a little line right there. I made sure each side is a little bit darker and then a little bit lighter, but still a dark tonal value in there to give a suggestion of the teeth. You don't have to go into great detail there. So we're just thinking about it. Is it light? Is it dark? And how big is it for all of these different shapes? And then I'm going to come down to the chin area. Nope. Let's put in that shadow underneath the bottom lip. And then I'm going to make this area darker. And then let's put her signature little mole in there. And her whole neck is way darker than the rest of her face. So I'm grabbing it at all the details that help to tell me what's going on in the neck. So whether it's coming from the hair or whether it's coming from the shirt. Let's see here. There we go. And there's shading on either side of this dark line that defines her chin, her jaw. There's shading on both this side and on this side. And then there's definitely a cast shadow down here from her chin. And then all of this dark stuff of her shirt. And it's the dark shirt that I think that really gives that graphic look, that dramatic look. So, and if you do sharpen your pencil, like mine is, you really don't want to press too hard so that the pencil breaks. Instead, you just go over it quite a few times. It's also an easier way of drawing with your hand so that your hand doesn't get, so that your wrist and your hand doesn't get sore by just going over it a couple of times. And trying to use your whole arm when shading instead of using your wrist, use your whole arm. Sorry, so instead of using your wrist, use your whole arm. And normally if I'm going to be doing lots of shading, I would be twisting the paper back and forth to get better angles so everything's a little bit easier on my body, because I want to be able to draw for as long as possible. I like to put in long hours of drawing. All right. So then let's get into this hair. And again, just thinking about it as tonal value shapes. That help define everything. And that we can use our eraser as a drawing tool, so we can go back in and define some things and areas and shapes. And I'm a little bit rougher when it comes to hair because I find that it gives it a better texture. If I'm a little bit more wild with my marks. And so I'm drawing more of the background in order to draw the hair, to draw the edge of the hair. Drawing this little curly cue at the side with my eraser. So just putting that in. To make it more defined, I just draw more of the background, tonal value in. Like that. And just do the little flips. And I'm just being really rough with the pencil. It doesn't have to be perfect, and the more imperfect it is, it gives a better texture for the hair. And again, I'm just looking at the shapes. I'm not drawing the hair strands individually at all. I'm just drawing the tonal value shapes. Is it light? Is it dark? Getting into the ears, I just draw what I see. I don't try to make it up. And it's just tonal value shapes. I want to make this forehead curve a little bit more, so I add a little tonal value onto the side. And then she's got a little bit of a dark definition for the hair right there. And then I'm going to start working at the top. And there's like these little like doorways that happen between the hair and the forehead and the face. So right here, there's a little doorway where it's left blank. It's the same tonal value as the forehead. And that way it feels like the hair is attached to the head. And you can start off by marking an area with a tonal value that's lighter and then going in and forming the darker shapes after. Because if you have the general shape of an area laid out, then you can see if it's big enough, if it's the right scale. So I take a lot of time drawing. I'm quite sure that probably some of your kids might have given up. Most of the time that kids' attention spans are only about 20 minutes if they're little. So I'm sure the ones that have stuck around this far are probably more into their teens, more adults. But just the fact that they're watching an artist draw or paint or seeing you doing it, they just have shorter attention spans. So they'll come back to it more often. So it's not that they don't like it. They'll come back to it more often and do little spurts at a time when they have the energy for it and when they can pay attention to it. And that is awesome, and that's a great way to work. And I think that more adults actually try to work that way. So they set timers so that they have breaks every 20 minutes. And some people find that a very productive way of working. in 20-minute intervals. So again, just pushing the background a little bit darker. To make the hair stand out, to define the hair. I made her a little bit more smiley, a little bit more coy. And we all tend to put our own faces into portraits, whether we want to or not, because we spend more time looking at ourselves than anyone else. So we know more about what our facial features look like than from somebody else's. So even though we're using a photograph to draw from, we still put some of our own features in there. So I'd be really interested to see what kind of features did you put in that might be more your features than Marilyn's. And I'm gonna just add a little bit of white to the background over here, just to make it a little bit more dramatic at that edge. And then draw this one in a little bit more defined to get this edge. So you get to decide how much detail you put into things, and it's your artistic license. So we're coming to the end here. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? Please let me know. And I've had a lot of fun this morning. I love drawing. And if you want to leave any comments or feedback, please do. And if you have some constructive criticism or something like that, feel free to email me, info@daphnecote.com. We're going to take a break for the weekend, and then we will be back at it on Monday. So I'll do another free drawing tutorial of some sort on Monday. Let's see here. Just like to darken things up. Get into those key areas. Measure twice, cut once. little bit more in there. Just going through and over. Redefining that jaw a little bit more.
All right. Well, I'm going to call that done. So make sure you sign your name. And thanks for joining me. So thanks for joining me in my studio today. I really appreciate it, and thanks again for your patience with the technical difficulties. And I hope everybody picks up pencils and gets drawing, keeps themselves active and busy. There's tons of reference material out there. I'm so impressed with all of my fellow artists who are putting out great ideas on how to stay creative at home. And they're all being very considerate about what kind of supplies everybody has at home. So there's lots of things to do today, lots of ways to be creative. So keep your mind busy, and everything that you do really builds up your skills and keeps your brain active and engaged. So when you do go back to work, or you're trying to figure out your life situation, you're firing those synapses back and forth in new ways that you'll probably come up with some amazing ideas. So when you're struggling to find those ideas, get creative in other ways. Pick up a pencil, draw, doodle, do what you need to do. It's a great stress reliever. It's a great way to meditate and to release a lot of those crazy stressed out thoughts. So I hope that you can do that. And yeah, because you're an amazing person with all of these different things and possibilities going on up in that big noggin of yours. So I'd love to see what you're doing. If you were drawing with me, please send me some pictures. I've been getting some great pictures, especially the ones from kids. They just like melt my heart. I love seeing them. I love sharing posts about them. So please do that. And please share this video as well. I hope you have a great day. I will be back on Monday. To do another tutorial. So thanks again for joining me. Bye.